Hello, everybody, and welcome to a second Week 12 edition of Steelers Spotlight. I'm Aaron Becker, and joining me today is former Steelers cornerback Justin King. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me, Aaron. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so we'll get right into it. Steelers coming off a tough 24-19 loss to the Cleveland Browns on Thursday Night Football. It was really a sloppy game on both sides. Obviously, the weather played a part as well, but it was a game that the Steelers found themselves in an 18-6 deficit, climbed their way back out, had a 19-18 lead, but ultimately the Browns were able to muster one last touchdown drive together to get out with the win. What do you think went wrong for the Steelers in this one?
Well, I mean, anytime that you get down against a division rival, right, regardless of the record, it gets pretty tough. And then you add in the elements, and then at the beginning of the game, you talk about getting to the red zone, but not the end zone. I think that kind of crept up to haunt us at the end of this game, just in terms of the point differential at the end. And I think those are the critical parts, right? And I think they kept Mr. Watt under wraps most of the game to the point where he couldn't have his splash plays and kind of have that impact. They created some turnovers and things of that nature, but when you get into the red zone, you have to punch it in for 7, especially when the elements come into play. Playing a division rival that'll get up for it regardless again of the record.
The Steelers' red zone issues have kind of been a factor the last few weeks here. We are starting to see more Justin Fields packages. We saw some explosiveness out of him last night, a 30-yard run. Is he the answer to those red zone issues, or do you think the Steelers need to start thinking more outside the box here to find their way into the end zone?
Well, everything gets tightened up in the red zone, right? You got less angles. It's like more of I can't even say a spacing game, but the angles are kind of taken away, and you got to hit different areas. And having a dynamic quarterback like Justin Fields can definitely add a wrinkle into the offense that makes it tough on defense, right? A lot of times defenses are playing like a cover 4 or like a man type of situation. And when you don't have a mobile quarterback, those things, I mean, that's like the baseline defense that you typically go against. And when you do have a mobile quarterback, those defenses have a little bit more holes, right? Where you gotta have someone that's out of the pass game that's kind of making sure that this quarterback doesn't take off for 18 yards and protect the goal line. I do think that Justin Fields in the red zone can be extremely beneficial, whether you're talking about boots, movement, passes, quarterback reads, and things of that nature. Again, because you're talking a shortened field, different angles, and things of that nature. We talk about the physics and getting the angles. He provides that, right? Like he's a very dynamic player. I remember recruiting him out of high school, but he's a fast kid. He can still throw the ball. It's not like he's a running back there, and it's just a matter of making sure the defense isn't on their trigger position, right? Where they're like a little bit on their heels and just trying to react to the different route combinations and things that the offense can throw at them. So I definitely think he can be a beneficial factor thrown into the offensive game plan when you get into the red zone.
The game did have a snow globe type of effect last night with snowy conditions throughout the game, and they really got worse as the game went on. How big of an impact do you think that weather played into the game? I mean, both teams had to play in it, but from your experience playing with the Steelers and even Penn State, any snowy games you can refer back to and how difficult it is to play in those conditions?
Yeah, snowy games are definitely difficult as a DB. You know, I like the speed. I like to be warm. I like a dry field. So all those factors play into it pretty heavily. I would say, like you said, both teams have to play in those conditions. But when you're coming back from a deficit, it becomes a little tough, and it mitigates risk, or I guess drives the talent disparity closer, right? So things that may have happened just from a personnel matchup, those things might not have happened, right? Where you talk about the receivers or some plays where I remember some just routes where like the players couldn't see the ball coming, and guys are falling around and different things of that nature where those athletic mismatches or advantages can kind of shine through, and they weren't able to do that, especially when we talk about coming from a deficit. So I think the time in which the weather came in was a critical factor when you talk about it starting to blizzard in the second half when you're
Right.
trying to forge a comeback, and your benefit is your athleticism and big playability.
Well, like we said, these two teams were obviously very familiar with one another playing in the AFC North. But it felt like a little bit of a trap game entering the game for a lot of fans and media members around the league. Uh, that being said, does this kind of tamper the Steelers' Super Bowl caliber expectations this year, or is this just a hey, you got to chalk it up to whatever it was, learn from our mistakes, and move on to the next game?
I think figuring out how to get into the end zone when you get to the red zone is going to be critical, right? Like that's a determining factor for all successful teams that play late into the season, unless you're just having explosive plays all over the place. And I don't think the Steelers are built that way, even though they've been running the ball efficiently, having some success with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, just kind of different ways of how you skin the cat. But I think getting that fixed is more determining factor of how successful they're going to be for the rest of the season, because they have a defense and they have the talent, I think, to play all the way and to win a Super Bowl, to be completely honest. But it's about bringing those different pieces together, operating in those critical times, situational football, and making sure that you're making the right decisions constantly throughout the season.
Well, the silver lining of playing on a short week is getting the mini bye after, and I think it's going to be much needed after back-to-back AFC North divisional games. How do players kind of try to spend that mini bye week? Is it different from player to player? And how did you like to spend it when you had one?
The mini. So I never played on a Thursday, so thank God for that.
Okay.
But on a bye week, we definitely try to or get back home, or depending on where you're at, where you're stationed in terms of your team that you're playing for, maybe get away for a weekend. Just get away from just the game and uh, the routine of running into the building, hot, cold tub, getting beat up a little bit, just to rejuvenate yourself a little bit. I know a lot of guys now, they go back to their college teams, check out that game if there's a big matchup going on, or if you have work to get done, right? I think the main thing later in the season is making sure that your body is in tip top shape, because that's when we talk about the attrition of players and not being available. Like that's another thing for players for teams to excel later in the season. So making sure that your body is taken care of first and foremost. If that's not taken care of, you can't chill at all. It goes to an extra, 3-4 days of getting that under wraps.
So, this Steelers team, they have a mixture of young guys, old guys, and kind of getting a feel of the Steelers locker room this year. The rookies are a little bit more mature. They're a little bit older than previous years, and they've been very outspoken about leaning on the vets. But when it comes to these mini bye weeks or bye weeks in general, are the vets a little bit more outspoken of helping the rookies, like how they should spend that time, or is it kind of just player to player and how they feel best to use that time?
It's player to player, and I think it comes down to position groups, right? You'll have some position group leaders that take the younger guys under the wings, like, hey, we're going here to kind of rejuvenate, get the body right, look over some film for the future, that type of thing. And then you got some position groups where guys are, every man for themselves a little bit, more or less, or half teams like that. Because when you still get in the NFL, we talk about it being a business, but like the best teams are still close knit group of guys, and they kind of operate the same, share information, and recognize that they're in it together. When you get to the bottom half of the league, you start dealing with like the dynamics of a position group room that's more of like a Squid Games or Hunger Games type. Like we're all in it for ourselves and that type of thing. So I'm not going to tell
Yeah.
you that I'm getting this right, or I'm studying to make sure that you don't take my job. Although that's the business and you have to, self-preserve. The best teams, the older vets, kind of give the blueprint to the younger guys on how to move through. And it's the younger guys that are open to hearing that information. So I think what you pointed out with a mature group of rookies typically are more open to hearing from vets because they're trying to develop, they're trying to get better. And that comes down and trickles down from the transfer portal, where you got guys playing in college for 5 to 8 years and different things of that nature. So, and the reclassification that happens in high school. So like all those different things, I think grows to that younger, more receptive rookie. And you have the teams that go young and maybe they don't listen, but it's not really about an age thing. But I really believe it's that nucleus, or how the culture of the team or position room is.
Hmm. Well, the Steelers are going to need to take full advantage of their mini bye week, as they have a second half gauntlet of a schedule, and right in week 13, they have yet another AFC North divisional battle with the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are only 4-7 right now. They're on a bye week this week, but they're a team I think that are better than their record says. Quarterback Joe Burrow, wide receiver Jamar Chase, playing some of their best football of their careers right now. Their defense has kind of been their Achilles heel as of late, but what do you think the Steelers have to do to avoid dropping back-to-back games, and not only back-to-back games, but back-to-back divisional games?
I think on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, there was a certain couple plays yesterday, but I think they've been playing up to the standard that they need to play. You would like to see. We can't even criticize T.J. Watt because he just makes so many plays and just continues to do what he does, right? Like what we expect from him. I think that's going to be a critical piece on the defense. But when it comes to offense, I felt like they had it rolling up just until last week, right? We talk about not scoring in the red zone. So not to rehash and throw everything up against the wall, but just make some nice adjustments to see what it happens in the red zone and how you can start punching in and turning those to 7-8 points instead of 3. I think incorporating Justin Fields and that 2 quarterback look. I don't know how they exactly do that in the NFL, but trying to have some wrinkle into that red zone attack to, get the defense on their heels a little bit will be critical moving forward.
Do you think that's difficult for the 2 quarterbacks kind of going in and out of the game a lot? I know Justin Fields spoke a little bit after the game yesterday and said for the 30-yard run, he said he was a little bit stiff. He was sick to his stomach that he actually didn't get the whole way for the touchdown. Is that difficult for both of those guys or not? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, it's easy theoretically to say like, oh, all right, stay ready, right? You got to stay ready. You don't have to get ready, but that's a farce. It is tough to come in and just perform immediately. When I played in the NFL, most of my time was playing nickel. So it was like, second, third down, depending on the personnel. Always had to stay ready, but when it was time to go, it was the most crucial down, right? 3rd and 7, we got to make sure this happens. And there is a rhythm that still happens in football, right? It's a level of matchups, and especially at the quarterback position. You talk about the reads, the fact patterns that they're used to seeing. Like sometimes it's like getting out there like a shooter, right? You get out there, you start with layups, but it's like you're coming into a game. It's like, 3-pointers, you got to be ready to hit it. That's a much tougher task. But if they can kind of, organize the way for them to get the requisite amount of play attempts and that they kind of understand the type of plays that they're running without tipping off the defense too much, I think it can work in timely situations. I don't think it's a true solution, but I think it could definitely bring some balance to attacking in the red zone.
Well, the Steelers secondary is going to have their hands full, like I said, with Burrow and Chase and even wide receiver T. Higgins, who's been a little bit injured this year, but he seems to be healthy now. That Steelers secondary, like I said, are going to have their hands full, but a guy who's kind of been quiet this year, at least statistically, is safety Minkah Fitzpatrick. What do you think the reason is for that?
I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, right? I mean, I've seen an article where he said he's playing the safety role to where he can take over and make sure that nothing breaks free, nothing gets through. And then there's like the opportunities to make plays. I think there was a few that were left out there, but it's tough at that safety position because you have the responsibility of the whole defense, not always just making those plays. Right? We think about the Troy Polamalu days. Like he couldn't just play that risk-free football if Ryan Clark's not there to kind of cover that back end. So it's hard to be both in one safety. So if he's like making sure that you're not having explosive plays on defense, which we haven't been having and having very like a lot of success, then it's up for the other 10 guys to kind of make those splash plays that we might be used to seeing Minkah make.
All right. Well, before we get you out of here, I like to end every show the same, and that's giving our guest the opportunity to spotlight someone in their life, whether it can be a former teammate or coach, a family member, friend that's had an impact on your career or even life. Any specific person or even story you'd like to share?
Oh man, that's a kind of caught me off guard there. Let me give it a couple seconds. Like shout out to my pops, Terry Smith. He's the associate head coach at Penn State, corners coach. Coach Joey Porter developed him up at Penn State and all those good things. My whole journey in football was kind of birthed through him, given the behind the scenes as a ball boy at Duquesne, kind of showed me the ropes as becoming a top level player in high school, college, and just kind of being my support system through this football business and ecosystem to me. Started my business at LIG Sports Group, doing a great job as a corners coach at Penn State, produced the most corners and DBs into the NFL in Penn State history. And, I mean, sometimes those things get lost in, being a position coach in the big ecosystem. So shout out to Coach Terry Smith up at Penn State.
All right. Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks for coming on the show today. I appreciate you taking the time.
No, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that is all for this edition of Steelers Spotlight. I'm Aaron Becker. And until next time.